What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Bonus Point Rugby Podcast. My name is TJ Olsen, joined alongside Davida Alafia, aka David since '86, and James Tesserero. Over the past weekend, we've had to watch the Black Ferns, the All Blacks, and the Wallabies all suffer losses. I'm pretty disappointed about the Black Ferns loss, so we're going to save that chat until next week until they have their final game, because there's not really much to unpack except some terrible defense. But we're still ready to chat all about the All Blacks and the Wallabies. So lots to unload there. But yeah, it's good to be back in the studio. I know it's been a couple of weeks. Yeah, we've all been pretty busy. I mean, Holla, you and I alone, we've been pretty busy days. But I think this is my safe haven. Even if it's 9 o'clock on an evening or 4 o'clock where James is, I think this is something where we can just turn around and go, footy. So
Rugby.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Welcome to Late Nights.
Late Nights at the Bonus Point Podcast,
where we talk all things rugby. Nothing like up late with men talking about balls. Yeah, dude. I mean, a lot's happened. Hey, a lot happened. The autumn test window has been awesome. I'm loving it. But I'm also just sort of, I'm seeing. Here's the thing. No Quay Cooper.
Here we go.
Here's something more controversial. Playing 2 Barretts. And I'm just saying, what was I saying? I said you can't play 2 Barretts.
And you can't play 3.
That's all I was saying. I said that. I said this a long time ago earlier this year. I said that you can't be playing 2 Barretts.
So maybe the rule is just the one. You just got to play.
You get one Barrett. That's it.
I know the parents will be pretty disappointed, but I think it's just the one Barrett and then just let it go. So yeah.
How you been, James?
Mate, I'm good. Down in Sydney, the Wicks have just started their pre-season. Rugby's back on the way, and things are looking up.
Well, I reckon. I'm jealous. That's what I'm doing. It annoys me. But what? Like, are you guys? Are you in full capacity?
Yeah, we are, mate. It's business as usual at pre-season training, and it's kind of at the moment. Fingers crossed, the pre-season will look very normal, and kind of we'll get a regular season out.
Well, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I've got 2 things I want to talk about.
Well, before we get into the chat. Okay.
Number one, I know we're not talking about the Black Ferns.
Yeah.
But seeing how the Black Ferns have gone thus far, are you a little worried, James, about the Wallaroos not having a test season?
Oh, actually, that's a good point. Yeah,
coming into next year.
Yeah, I really am. I think the Southern Hemisphere teams, the women's programs are kind of falling behind the Northern Hemisphere women's programs. Yeah. And if the Black Ferns are getting towed up like this, I am a little bit concerned about what the Wallaroos, how they'll fare. But you never know. Like, it's going to be a youngish Wallaroos team, and there's a fair bit of turnover and. There's
a certain 36-year-old halfback in there. I mean, she'll bring up the average age. They go all right.
It's always good when you're able to bring up the averages just a little bit.
But I think it is surprising watching, and because we're not even talking about close games anymore. We're talking about decimations.
I didn't think it was going to be this bad. Like, I knew, obviously, when you're coming off a 2 or 18-month break, you sit there and you go, okay, like, there's going to be some cobwebs to blow out. There's going to be some stuff you've got to fix. But, like, to be decimated by at least 20 to 30 points,
and over multiple games.
Yeah, and you've got players there that do have a lot of experience that would have been training there probably with friends during that COVID area. Like, you got Portia Woodman and Stacey Fuller. I know they've come from the sevens bracket. And you've obviously got a few other players that are mixed in here and there, like Eldora Itunu. I know she hasn't started many games, but far out.
Still in the system.
It's still crazy. But that really goes to show, like, the Six Nations over in in the UK. And
well, I mean, let's just call it for what it is, guys. It's like COVID, no COVID. You got to play rugby.
Yeah, you got it.
Vax, not vax. You got to play rugby.
Yeah. All right,
I said it. I'm sorry, guys. We've been away. I've been banking all of this in. I'm trying to get this out, man.
Controversy hasn't even gone
Controversial, and we're mad late too. I'm overtired. I'm underpaid.
yet.
They don't pay me enough to do this. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry. But let's go straight into it. So let's talk about the Ireland All Blacks game, because obviously I'm fiending to talk about that one, and I think the All Blacks were due for a loss. I believe this is something that will be good for them. But Ireland, I think they played a really good territory game. The All Blacks' work rate wasn't what was expected. Plus, they struggled to get clean ball against that really strong line speed. But I mentioned to you guys a few weeks ago that I thought that this was going to be the true test of the All Blacks team. Really got a lot of things found out. I think their forward play was very one-dimensional. The passing by the backs was just awful. And I think there was a couple of options here and there that just went astray. And they tried to dig themselves out of a hole with their kicking game as well, but still, I don't know what really went on. But the Irish team, I think you've really, really got to look at them and go, okay, now they're true contenders about what they can provide to tier one teams. They get too comfortable. No,
I completely disagree.
Come on.
No. Here's the thing. This is what happens. I think they've had, we'll call it the O'Driscoll era, where that was said multiple times and they came through maybe twice. The problem is that they're peaking, and then this is their peak. They're not going to get any better. This is it. This is where they are.
So this is the thing I'm gonna say. I do agree with you, is that they're peaking right now, and this is going to be it. But this is what happens every year: is they peak too early, heading into a World Cup.
Well, I mean, that's my point.
No. But you turn around and say for example, they have learnt from their past two campaigns, and they haven't peaked too early, but they maintain. That for the one time they're able to reestablish these people that are in that squad,
right,
and they keep it going.
Right. Well, we're yet to see that, and there wasn't anything that I saw that made me think otherwise. Again, we're talking the same bracket or point differential. We're seeing a super close game where maybe the rub of the green went Ireland's way, or a call here or there. I didn't see anything that made me think that, oh well, they're a front runner contender now at all in the slightest.
I don't reckon they're a front runner contender, but I definitely think they put people on their back foot properly. It's like they're not number one, they're not number two, they're not number three.
No, I completely disagree. I'm more like, I think what Ireland do really well is they love the test where the Southern Hemisphere teams come. Them and Wales specifically. England and the French and Italy, they sort of take it as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about the Welsh and the Irish where they really get behind it. It's like it's their drinking season, guys. Where they're just like, well, here it is.
All right, James,
this is it.
Well, what's your opinion? Where do you
But I think there was a few factors. I think part of the biggest aspect is probably psychological, in terms of a lot of teams have suffered nothing but losses to the All Blacks. And coming into this test match, the Irish had beaten the All Blacks 2 of the last 4, which now becomes 3 of the last 5. And in most matches, the All Blacks start 15-0 before kickoff, because they've done the haka and they've won a dozen consecutive tests against this country. And that's just not the case with the Irish. I think there's no fear of the All Blacks. A lot of that side have enjoyed success against the All Blacks. Where if you contrast that with the Wallabies, none of these Wallabies have really won a series against the All Blacks, and that kind of works into the psyche. So I think the psychological aspect's big. I think the rugby matchup is a rough one for the All Blacks, coming up against a team that's very tactically astute and kicks well.
Mm-hmm.
And then anytime any team beats the All Blacks, they do so with heavy line speed and forcing turnovers.
Yeah.
And that's a very high risk, high reward strategy. Heavy line speed against the All Blacks makes you vulnerable. But if you do it right and your defense is connected, you cause turnovers. So the Irish team got all that right, and I wasn't all that surprised by the win.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So I do agree with you in a sense. There is two ways you can look at it, and I think
no, there's only one.
And I just gave you it.
All right, so I think the other factor we've got to look into is obviously the All Blacks and the tour they've been on. They've been on the Rugby Championship, and they've also stepped onto the Northern Tour. They've had to endure multiple COVID quarantines where they travel, squads and units being constantly changing out. So I'm all for that. I understand that, but I do think Ireland did play a pretty sound game.
What? Can I say something though?
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah,
there's a microphone.
There's a microphone. Well, here's the thing, right? And I'm glad that you brought up the scheduling for the All Blacks too, because I think we saw the same thing similar to the Lions tour, right? Where they're on the road that much and away, where and they weren't away as much as the All Blacks have been away for this tour. So I think where the Lions drop a few games here and there to South Africa, we're sort of seeing that reoccurrence of, maybe not being at home, not being able to have that home and away advantage. But James said it perfectly. He's like, Ireland just did their homework and played the games that they needed to play. Yeah. But I also think too, like, if you're going to think of, I think until Ireland can beat the All Blacks in a World Cup final, I'm really not paying any attention to what they do. And I'm not trying to be mean, and I'm not trying to take away those wins, but that's just what it is. Because in big moments, when it counts, when we just don't see Ireland do too often, let alone against a Southern Hemisphere team.
So you're just looking for more consistency now. So obviously, that's something if you happen on a regular.
Dude, let's just call it for what it is, bros. If you're going to the Northern Hemisphere and you're playing 5 or 6 games and you're going to second last game, right? And you haven't dropped a game, you're gonna drop a game, right? And you're going against some of the most Ireland to the Northern Hemisphere and/or Wales are what All Blacks supporters are to the All Blacks team. That's Ireland are crazy. They're crazy, dude. They're bonkers about rugby, man. That sways everything. I'm like, 8 points? Come on, son. I was like, we got 1 point 1 year, 3 points another year. I'm like, blow them out, and then I'll be like, damn. Okay. All right. That's all I'm saying. To all the Irish fans, I want all the smoke. Let's go.
Yeah, they're coming for you. I do want to talk about a few players that were on this Irish team that aren't necessarily Irish.
Yeah, isn't that an interesting thing?
So we got 3 that are standouts. We got James Lowe, we got Bundy Aki, and we got Gibson Park, the halfback. So all these guys have all played Super Rugby for New Zealand teams.
Right. Oh,
they all grew up wanting to play for the All Blacks.
I didn't even know.
But all played at a time where the players ahead of them were in the pecking order. They were very talented compared. So forcing them to look for opportunities across the world, and eventually working their way into the Irish squad. With World Rugby's residency rule. So it's a pretty interesting.
It's amazing how it works for Tier 1 nations. That's all I want to say. It's amazing how it works really well for Tier 1 nations.
But I think especially James Lowe, I think a lot of them were substantial parts in this All Blacks loss. Like you were talking about the line speed on the defense. I think James Lowe was a big aspect to that. So what we want to look at is how can we see this? Is this beneficial for rugby, or is this something where we just see it how it is, or what's the go? Should New Zealand rugby look to use more things like sabbatical years or things like that, or just keep it how it is? James, what are you looking at when it comes to seeing these types of players who dreamt of being All Blacks, moved overseas, copped an Irish passport, now they're Ireland's favourite sons?
Yeah, like Tongan and Samoans that all of a sudden are Australian. I'm
no.
Really interested to see.
No, they're Australian.
Yeah, James, what are your thoughts?
Mate, I think the New Zealand system has kind of a fair catchment for kind of top flight elite players. It's also got incredible depth. And if you're kind of on the fringe of that catchment and you go elsewhere, there's nothing to say that Lowe wouldn't have become an All Black if he'd stuck it out at a New Zealand province. So we hear the same thing with, there's a huge list of Waratahs, former New South Wales-born players who the Waratahs don't want and become test players elsewhere, and questions are asked. So it's a hard one. Like if somebody as a young man takes an opportunity overseas and they've got dual citizenship and they're eligible in a number of places, I don't think you can be too harsh on the local system. Having said that, Lowe probably was the best player on the field the other day, and
it was for sure.
That probably hurt every New Zealand rugby fan.
It hurt me so much because he was one of my favourite players growing up.
It hurts your heart a bit.
Everything. It hurts all of me. Oh man, all I wanted to do was see him in an All Blacks jersey, but it just doesn't happen. So yeah, but I don't know. Come on, give me the.
Smoke now.
Yeah, give me the smoke. Come on.
No, dude. I think it's great, but like by my smart ass comment of saying I'm glad it worked for Tier 1 nations, I really mean that, because you're talking about guys that have gone into a system that are paid to be there and paid the international player status quo payment. And it's worked. I mean, all three players were actually very good players out in the Southern Hemisphere, who, like James said, James Lowe, he definitely could have been an All Black. But, took the risk, went elsewhere, and he's still playing international rugby and was the best player on the field. So I just think, I'm a super big advocate for being able to choose who you would like to play for. If you've got dual citizenship or like dual residency, but I definitely think there needs to be a 1, 2, an A, B, C, and if you're not chosen in A, then you're automatically qualified for B and whatnot. But obviously a lot of things come into play, and the biggest thing is money, and that's something that Tier 1 nations, when you're adequate, like when you are able to play for both, Tier 1 nations always win. So, and that's awesome. Cool. Glad it works for you. If the system ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, Ireland's loving it right
until now. I think November 24th, when IRB go to vote to veto the ruling and see if it's possible to change. But I'm happy for them, dude. Yeah. Super happy for them.
Those guys, yeah. I think,
dude, the Wallabies have gotten out of it too. They got Nella Tupou. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like you and the Alatoa brothers. Yeah. Well, one of them. Yeah. Well, I mean, they had two of them in schoolboys, I'm pretty sure, and then obviously, one of them went for Samoa. Yeah. But like, I'm cool with it. I don't like how it's governed. And I think the biggest thing for me is that the IRB don't govern it. It's the different federations that govern it. I'm like, nah, mate. Because when money's involved, bro, everyone wants to provide for themselves and their family.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and that's perfectly okay. But there's a bunch of players that can. I'm just saying. Not even about the Pacific Islands. You look it through Europe. The amount of European players, Romania have a lot of players that are Romanian descent that are dual eligibility.
Oh, isn't Georgia another one?
Georgia is another one.
Yeah,
100%.
The team of 15 props. Yeah, that's
the team.
But talking about the good defensive effort, obviously for James Lowe, I will talk about the defensive effort on the side of the ball for the All Blacks. One guy who was massive for me was Dalton Papali'i. So I think the stat that I read, I think it was 158 tackles were made in the first half by the All Blacks. And I think almost 27 or 28 of those were made by Dalton. So I think he's got to be slide into that starting jersey again this week. I don't know how he wouldn't be able to get that. But like I was saying before, I do think the All Blacks do need to reinvent themselves on the attacking end. I think their forwards especially, they didn't get any really good go forward. They were very one-dimensional. Kicking attack, tried to dig him out of a hole. But, I'm not really sure what you do. Do you go away from the traditional 1-3-3-1 and go away from pods and give them more space to play? And, I'm not really sure what to go from there. But what do you guys expect from this French matchup? Like, if you were looking at the French team that's played, you've obviously got Dupont on one side, who's probably going to be named as the best halfback in the past year. And then a pretty strong back row from the limited stuff that I've seen. What do you guys expect from this French matchup?
Mate, I think this will be a cracking match, and this is probably the form Northern Hemisphere team against the form Southern Hemisphere team. I think this matchup may actually be more favourable for the All Blacks than the Irish matchup. Ireland play very much to structure, although they kind of don't give the opposition a lot of turnover and a lot of scraps. And the All Blacks have kind of fed on scraps and unstructured play kind of in recent years, and that's their go-to. I think the French will try to play the All Blacks in an unstructured way, and that might play into the All Blacks' hands. And it'll also make this a very, very entertaining match. So 100%. I wouldn't be surprised if this is 45-42, and I don't know who's going to win.
Yeah, what do you reckon?
I totally agree. I think there's going to be the French are going to kick early, and they're going to do it a little more than we would think they would, just to see what the back three are going to do. I think Richie Mullen with starting is definitely a difference right now, so they're going to try and test those waters to send the ball back, see where he is defensively. Is he sitting back? Is he in that pocket so that he can turn? And if he's not, I think we're going to see the back three really do some heavy work. And I think they're going to try and crash that 9-10 channel consistently to try and see if they can nullify anything. I think, but like James said, that's a very big risk because we've seen numerous teams this year that crash that 9-10 channel. And you've got the All Blacks, 1 to 8, just they're on that ball. And if there's daylight, they see it. And then if they're not getting the ball, they're definitely getting the penalty. And then teams suffer when they get deep into the opposition's 22. So I'm looking forward to it. I agree with James. It's going to be one of those high point scoring games, but a close one. And look, if you're an All Blacks fan, you just want to beat the French on these tours. Honestly, everyone else, or I can lose all those games except for the French, because that's you have nightmares of that when you're an All Blacks. Again.
Well, I actually put my foot in my mouth because I've just pulled up the lineup, and Papali's out. He's not playing. You've also got.
No, I think there's Tutu. You got Adi Savir.
No, Savir.
No, Sam Cane.
Sam Cane.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this
Sam Cane starting.
Sam Cane is starting.
Who's captain though? Whitelock.
So you can't go wrong. You got Whitelock and Brody in the locks. That's just the best locking combination I've ever seen in my life there. But you got Nepo. Dane.
Disagree. John Eales and. I'm not joking. Garrick Morgan and John Eales is possibly the greatest second row of all time.
I'll take Whitelock and Rich Alec. And then, but you've got only one Barrett because one Bowden's out with a head knock.
He's out.
Yeah. And then, but the one thing that I do like to see.
Watch what happens. All the points.
Well, the one thing I do like to see is Tupaia in at 12, but then you've got Rico at 13.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so can we talk about Quintapaya?
Yeah. What?
I have no idea why he hasn't got more starts.
Because they're trying to build him in slow. It's because they
What happened to old mate? What was his name? The outside center for the All Blacks. The past decade, and then he faded. I'm having a complete migraine. Handsome young Samoan boy. Holy, possibly the greatest center that could have graced an All Blacks jersey, and then they just put too much pressure on him.
Jackie Tom?
No.
Kahui. Is he Tom?
Well,
Kahui?
No, not Kahui. No, he's Samoan fella. What's his name? Dude, played for the Blues.
Because
that's what happened. He killed it, and then all of a sudden, just hold on, I'll get this up.
All right, we're gonna figure it out. Bring it back. Okay. Well, while we're going down memory lane and we're trying to go down Google, I think we'll move on. We'll chat about Aussie versus England, because I think a lot of people are starting to get bloody frustrated with this TMO, and for a lot of reasons.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, because I'm not torn, but I'm mad because obviously looking at the TMO and you're going, he's helped revolutionize the game. He's provided us a lot of insight in the gameplay, but there's a lot of reasons why the TMO is now doing more harm than good, because I think Tom Wright was, I know there was contact to the head, and I know it's become a rule that it's very black and white, but I think he was hard done by. I think there were other things, but James, we were chatting a little bit. TMO plus a few other factors. What's your take on it? Because I know you're not enjoying it a lot either.
I'm not. I think we're all trying to get everyone wants the referees to get the calls right.
Right.
But I think we're struggling with the amount of stoppages in the game. Almost no tries, almost 0 tries are blown at the point of scoring. So it kind of creates a little bit of an anticlimax when they look at it for a minute and then decide on it. And there's some recent things that have been happening specifically on this tour. I'm not sure that this is the first time it's happened, but it's certainly more noticeable, where the local broadcaster has discretion about what gets replayed on the big screen. And so every Southern Hemisphere team who is touring, anytime there's marginal foul play, the local broadcaster replays it a number of times on the big screen. That brings the 70,000 idiots in the stand into it.
Yeah, 100%.
And that brings the referee into it. And the local it's actually changing the dynamic of home ground advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of the local broadcasters are replaying foul play from the touring team and not replaying foul play from the home team. And it's putting your fingers on the scale of the match in very, very real ways. And you can make a case that the Scotland test was the biggest factor in that was the TMO selectively replaying certain Wallabies foul plays and choosing not to replay Scottish foul plays.
Yeah. What do you mean, James? What do you mean not playing?
Well, what I mean is that the Alatoa yellow card, which denied us a try, the clean-out happened immediately after a heavy seatbelt tackle. The referee missed it. The local broadcaster certainly saw it, replayed it a bunch of times as the referee was awarding the try, but they started the replay after the seatbelt tackle and just before the clean-out. So it's selective use of video is impacting referees, and it's heavily influencing results. So I don't think that's a good thing.
We were chatting about it before. It was like when I mentioned the Nick White changing his line. I think that is one of the most asinine calls, and I think Morgan Turanui, who commentates, he was definitely in agreement on that one, because he was going off at Andrew Mertens for like a couple of minutes, saying what he's not allowed to run towards the ball. He has to run away from the ball and then supposedly changing his line. And you'd hear the crowd; it just continues to get louder and louder and louder, and it's just I'm feeling
a worrying trend. It's a really worrying trend. I don't know. I just hope that, when the Wallabies host tests, I hope Stan is on top of this.
Yeah.
And I hope the Australian crowd are watching the big screen as much as they're watching the game.
100%.
It's a worrying trend, really worrying.
Well, because I did notice that as well, is that there was the TMO was going over different angles. So it would go from 4 different angles. And I did notice in the back screen, it was just a constant loop replay of the one slowdown of the perfect angle. And then I was like, man, you just can't win. I don't know. What do you reckon?
No, I agree with both. Yeah. I think it's very petty and definitely not the type of game that they play in heaven, which is what rugby's all about. There's nothing gentlemanly about what they're doing, trying to sway their decisions. But again, I think that someone needs to put their foot down and say, you need to stop this. There needs to be something in the bargaining agreement that says that local, the local.
They have to say.
Right, yeah. No. We see what they see, and that is all. But, that's also, trying to tell the English not to have a pint on a Friday. So, good luck.
Oh, man. Well, I will give the Wallabies credit, because although I did have some critical criticism on their line out, their play calling, the back line. That was probably the biggest letdown for me. I did think their work rate was really high. Just like the All Blacks, their defensive effort was pretty positive. I think they made a lot of tackles. They were going forward. But, I think once we start to see Kurtley Beale and James O'Connor back in the mix, I'm starting to see some really disconnection in their back line, sorely lacking a lot of their fundamental catch pass skills. And I don't know if that's just continuity built throughout camp that they weren't able to get, or whether it's just random plays that have gone astray. But I think they've really gone away from Dave Rennie's philosophy of treasuring the ball, because that's always been something that he's really wanted to do. So when you look at the poor execution from the attack and other things like that, what do you guys think? Is it more down to the players, or do you think it's more down to the coaching, or do you think it's just the situation they've been put in, just tried to hope to bring it out of the ground because they've had a few people go back overseas?
There's definitely a disconnection in between how they were playing and how they are playing now, and that comes down to personnel. So I suppose on that avenue, you have to look at the coaching that's taken place with choosing the players that you want to be in key positions. Having said that, though, I don't feel as though at that level, when you're running the same system, that the personnel should make a difference, right? Because it's always going to be the individuality. Maybe someone's got a bit more flair, or has a better kick, or whatever it is. But when you're running systems, the systems are run because the coaching staff know exactly what they're working with, and think that the players that they're choosing have come in. Having said that, though, I think Beale was an SOS for sure, and that was a little worrying for me, because I was like, why? You don't need him. You've got the personnel thus far. I think the Quaid and Karevi aspect was something that they actually did need. I don't feel that Beale was needed, and I think that did disrupt, at least on a playing level, the system. Because I honestly believe James O'Connor can slot in at 10, and what you lose in an ambiguous flair, you gain in the same sort. Like you've got the same sort of level-headed calmness that can still execute plays that need to be executed. So I don't know. That's a tough question for me. But at the end of the day, I think. Look, I think the players just didn't run the system. And I think Beale coming in, not being with the boys, that changes everything too. Because we've got to remember, Quaid and Karevi were with the boys, though. They were in the camp together. Do you know what I mean? And Beale's just come in. And
it's been a while since Beale's been there.
Yeah, and dude, he looked out of place. I'm sorry, you don't look like an international fullback, mate. You look like you should be playing in a competition that's outside of Super Rugby domestically and not in Six Nations.
Yeah. James, you agree, disagree? What do you reckon?
I agree with all of that. I think James O'Connor looks quite rusty, and I think he's trying to play his way back into form in international matches on foreign soil, which is a very big ask. Ideally, you kind of play your way back into form in Super Rugby or kind of a level lower. So it's a big ask in James O'Connor, and I don't think he's been great. I agree that Beale looks kind of a step slow and probably past this level, and also a little bit disjointed and confused. And then we're kind of at second string with the rest of our back line outside of halfback. So I think it hasn't been pretty and it hasn't been good, but I think a bit of context is important.
100%. Do you think changing the Ghetto rule will help the Wallabies on a long-term basis, like beyond the World Cup? Like we're talking 10 years down the track?
I hope so.
I
don't know.
I know you hope so, but what do you think?
I think we've seen what happens when the Wallabies can access their most talented players.
Yeah.
And I think that we're not deep enough to win big test matches without our talented players.
Yeah.
So if we relax the Ghetto law and we get our most talented players, whether that weakens the local competition and we produce fewer world-class players, time will tell. We're all just being theoretical at the moment, and I think there's a situation where things are going. I think between World Cups, I think we'll have access to our Japanese players during the June-July window, and we'll have access to our European players, but not our Japanese players during the spring tour.
Right.
So we'll be stronger than we were in the past, but we probably won't have access to our strongest side, except for every 4 years of the World Cup. And that puts us in the same boat as a number of different test nations.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's kind of build off that, because I know club versus country is something that you guys have both wanted to talk about. So obviously from the picture that you've painted, it sounds like they've got a good model. Like, we can have, for the players that are available for the Japanese side, we can have a camp with them, and then we can plan around that, and then we can have a solid squad there, and then we can plan, instead of having the players that just are sitting on the back burner and going, oh, I don't know if I should sign on for this spring tour or not, because I don't know if it's going to piss off my club. Now the Wallabies can start to plan around that.
Yeah.
But I know you've mulled around this a lot, James, and I know you have as well, Hala. Do you guys see any detriment to that? Possibly other players not even getting looked at because that are coming through the system, that maybe they'll go, okay, we'll just go get it from overseas. We won't even worry about the local talent. Or is there something where continuity will be a factor? What do you guys see any detriment towards that? Or do you think that's the perfect system for Australia for at least the next 4 years?
Over to you, James.
I think it's probably the best system we have. It makes us more talented than we were previously. I don't think it. So there's a school of thought that says if your Samu Karevis are getting selected for the Wallabies every year, that drives their value down in Japan, because they maybe do a light syndesmosis injury in a test match and miss a Japanese preseason.
Right.
The Wallabies players are so valuable overseas because previously the Wallabies have had their hands off and said, if you're overseas, you're not a Wallaby. And that's actually driven the value of these Wallabies up and made them more appealing to foreign clubs. So again, this is all a little bit experimental, but theoretically, if these players are available more to the national team, there is high risk of injury. They probably do become less appealing, and perhaps less Australians get poached by foreign clubs. So that's a counter argument.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, I do agree with everything that James said on a business level. For me personally, I think it's if we're going to be talking what you want to do in anything in any sport, you want to represent at a national level. That is your goal. If you don't want to play at the national level, then why are you doing it, right? You want to be the number one. You want to be part of the number one team. So I'm definitely all in on representing your nation number one. That should be the goal. And if it's not that, if that's not your goal, then why are you playing the sport? But that's not the nature of the business, unfortunately. Anyone that wants to be an athlete wants to be the best, but at the same time, you could be Anna Kournikova, make more money than everyone else that's doing exactly what you're doing, and never be ranked in the top 20.
Well, yeah, you see a lot of
and that's no diss. Yeah. I'm just saying, that's the business, though, right?
Well, you also see it a bit in the basketball world as well. Like when they did the Dream Team, that was the best players plus one college kid, Christian Laettner. But you've got the best players in the US competing. Right. Now it's most of the guys who are probably like top 10. They're sitting there going, why should I have to suffer through an NBA season and then go play overseas for an Olympics or for the USA? So
and I get it. I think what Australia has gone through right now is a really great reminder of what a lot of tier 2 nations go through every freaking year, having top tier players. And obviously I'm going to be passionate and talk about Tonga. When you've got Malachi Fekitoa and George Mawala winning Players of the Year, in their position. George Mawala one year won the whatever it was, the Heineken Cup, wherever it is in the UK. Like, he was the best. He was voted the most valuable player. Like, and we don't get to choose him. Do you know, like Tonga? So he can't play for the club. He can't play for the All Blacks because they're only choosing Super Rugby players, which is fine. I get that.
Yeah.
But then he can't play for Tonga. Malachi Fekitoa is another one, born and raised in Tonga. So we can't choose him because he's playing for a club that just doesn't want to release him because, he may get injured. Even though he's been playing at this highest level, club rugby, and never been injured, we don't want to risk him having to spend his own money to catch a flight to play some games that he's probably going to sponsor the rest of the team because he makes that much money. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I think the Wallaby, this is a really good insight to see when there isn't depth, what are we willing to compromise here?
Yeah, I think the New Zealand model and the Australian model.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, James.
The Australian model and New Zealand model is different off the basis of depth.
100. But that's my point, though. That's exactly my point. I think Australia have had the depth previously. Well, they thought they had the depth, and then now they've realized, we don't. And now we need to start switching things up. And to be fair, I'm all for Australia switching it up. I think the ghetto rule's stupid.
You've been saying that for years.
Choose your best 15. I don't care. Choose them. You need to choose your best 15. Let's make it mostly because the last 15 years of Bledisloe have been mad boring. And I want all the smoke. I want James blowing me up, being like, "Brass, it's over," with like 3 minutes to go. That's what I want. I don't get that anymore.
Me and Holler are just depressed on the couch, just going, "How did this happen?"
But no, in all seriousness, though, it's coming back. That's what I'm saying, man. Yeah. Garrick Morgan, John Eales, bro. Those are the years, my G. Those were the years. With what's his name? David Wilson at number 7. Come on now. Now that was a Wallaby team. That was a Wallaby team.
I got James perked up. There you go.
But yeah, that's what I think.
No, I get it.
I'm all for it. Choose your best 15. It's like nation over everything.
But just let Tonga and everyone else do the same.
100%. It can't be one-way traffic in Tier 1 nations.
Okay.
For sure.
I got you. I feel you. I feel the pain. There we go. All right, we got Michael Hooper, now been ruled out due to a foot injury. So you now have Leota, Samu, and Valentini in the back 3. So that's a pretty deadly back 3. But what's more interesting is Rennie asking James Slipper to skipper the Wallabies. So this will be the second time Slipper has captained the side. He previously did it against the USA team in 2015. So I know we've had Alan Alatoa, I think he's out with a concussion or something like that. But James Slipper in the captaincy role, are you confident, James, that he can play his role on the field and he can get it done as well? He's got enough experience.
I think so. The stories coming out of the Wallabies camp is that during selection, when they announced the selection and the captain, the Wallabies camp went berserk, and apparently it was a very emotional time. And this is a bit of a redemption for Slipper, who you'll remember was kind of fell out of favour with some off-field stuff, and was actually suspended from Australian rugby for a little while. So that's all happened since he last captained the Wallabies, and I think this was apparently quite an emotional selection, and it has the potential to really give the Wallabies a lift this weekend.
Yeah, I think he's definitely got the experience there to get it done. I don't know. What do you reckon?
Look, James hit it on the head. It's an emotional pick. He's gone through a lot, and that's why. Look, Rennie is a coach that understands team management. Doesn't just come from top down; it comes from within. And like James said, if from within the Wallabies camp, everyone lost it, and that's why he's captain. And that's all that matters. If the players are behind it and they believe in it, then that's what they need.
Yeah,
especially with how the tour is going. So
and I think it'll be a good boost for him, especially against the reigning Six Nations champions. So So Yeah, I think if they're going to get any response out of them, that's going to be the thing that kicks them in the ass and gets them going. But the last thing I did want to ask you guys really quickly. So obviously the Wallabies have had a pretty rough go of it on the spring tour, and I want to get you guys input on the All Blacks as well. But if they're able to get a win against Wales this weekend, do they get a pass mark or a fail mark on this tour? What do you guys reckon?
They get a pass without having Quade or Karevi for sure.
Against Wales.
Yep.
Just that one game, they're good.
Well, okay. James O'Connor's rusty. They've called in probably what I believe is their fourth choice because they had to in Beale.
Yeah.
They don't have the guy that's actually been performing the whole year and their captain, their leader. Mm-hmm. And they pulled that win out. Yeah, man, for sure. And I think, again, the James Slipper captaincy really comes into play here. I bet you we're going to see some things this weekend from that forward pack that we haven't seen all year. Mm. And for me, it's going to be just a lot of grunt, a lot of niggle, because let's be honest, James Slipper loves that. Mm-hmm. For a scrum, watch his chat. And the boys are going to be fired up. And I just think we're going to see just a little more a Wallabies team that are just got a fire lit up their ass and they're ready just to go to war. And I think that'll pay dividends, and they should get the pass on that.
All right, I know there's some bias over the Wallabies camp, but yeah, pass or fail if they get the they get the win against Wales. You reckon pass or fail?
Me?
Yeah.
Mate, I think Coach Rennie probably has certain expectations, and a win over Wales will probably give Rennie enough confidence and satisfaction to call it a pass. You also have the Australian rugby public who are on such a high after the 5-game winning streak, and we've now lost 2 in a row, and that's a different situation. So we're
welcome to what it's like being an All Black fan when we lose one game.
So if we win 1 out of our 3 on the European tour on the back of a pretty successful domestic kind of season, I think the Australian rugby public will be disappointed. I think people who kind of understand the context and probably Rennie will probably consider it a pass.
James,
so you got to remember that.
Also, keep going.
You have to remember that there's unprecedented things happened last week in terms of, you talk about selecting guys from overseas. Last week, we gave a cap to a guy I'd never heard of before.
Oh, what is it? Ollie Norris?
Yeah. No, that's not his name. Ollie something. I don't know. You're making my point for me. So, 2 tight head props went down in a match, and we're just finding an Australian qualified guy playing locally, and that's never really happened in professional era. So, kind of, and then all the Ollie Hoskins, yeah. So, I think that's all important context. I think we probably would have taken a bigger squad and probably had 3 tight head props if it wasn't for COVID factors.
100%.
So there's all sorts of other things playing into it, but the average Australian rugby fan doesn't know this and doesn't care. They're just seeing losses. So whether it's a pass mark, I think it depends on kind of who you are.
Do you want to know a funny story that I heard about him? Obviously I don't know his name, but I've heard the funny story about how he got the call for how he
no.
So he's supposedly a massive fantasy nerd, like fantasy games and stuff. And he was at a friend's house and he was playing Dungeons and Dragons.
No,
yeah,
D&D strikes again, dude.
And so he was in the middle of the session supposedly, and he looked at his phone, and he had 2 missed calls from a number he didn't recognize. Called back, and then he found out he was in the Wallabies.
It was the Wallabies scrum coach.
Yeah, who's that? So Dan,
man, can they get stuck out here?
So who's the Wallaby scrum coach? Is Dan McEl is the forwards coach, right? But who's their scrum coach?
It's a South African guy, Cobus something.
Oh,
he's a South African. He's the fellow who's always in the huddles with the iPhone filming their chat.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He goes home, he's just like, he's looking at it. He's saying what?
Oh, man. Okay, last one. So, All Blacks. Just pass.
Foul.
Because of one loss.
Foul.
All right. James, give me.
No, here's the thing.
Give me
name me a win that was impressive. There is none.
The one coming this weekend.
Oh.
I love you.
My man, bro. If I could hunger you right now, I would.
Yeah, you would. All right, what do you reckon, James? Pass or fail? If they're able to get the win against France, you reckon it's a full-on pass, or do you reckon there's a bit of a question mark there?
Mate, I think the expectations of the All Blacks are so high that if you lose a game, it's considered a pretty big disappointment. But
yes,
like beating a good France side will go a long way towards you kind of finish the tour on a high. And those two teams, I don't know if they see each other again before the World Cup. And they could potentially be a World Cup final in 18 months. So 100%. It's a big game. And you have a good win against France and all's right with the world.
Yeah, I can't.
I know. The world keeps on spinning.
I'm going to what? Two of the test matches for the All Blacks in France.
Oh, okay, we get it. Brag, bro.
So I'm excited.
That is like far out.
I told you I was buying tickets. You told yeah. Shut up.
Don't that chicken in the savings.
Don't try don't try to put me on the spot. But yeah, we'll be right back here next week. We'll be chatting about Black Ferns and how we can round out that campaign. Oh, man, I really hope they get a win.
Man, it's good to have the podcast again. I've missed the podcast, boys.
We've been busy, man.
Thursday nights haven't been the same. I'm just twiddling my thumbs.
I know.
Or is it my thumbs? Or...
Oh, get out. It's late night at the bonus point.
Late night at the bonus point.
No, but you good to have you guys back. It's good to chat footy again. We'll be back next week, same time, chatting all about the Black Ferns and how they ended it. We will chat about the...
But Black Ferns win, bro.
You reckon?
I'm a gambling man.
No, you're not.
I told you. I know I've lost a lot of money in the last 2 weeks. UFC has really killed me.
You're a silly man. You're a silly man.
Here's the thing. If you're a betting man, All Blacks by 30, Black Ferns by 10 or 12 or under.
12 or under?
12 or under. So, sorry. 1 to 12 or 13 and over, right? Those are the odds in Australia.
Yeah.
So you go 1 to 12, Black Ferns win, and then we're going plus 30 for the All Blacks.
If you're able to pull
it's paying about $12.50. If depending, if you're on sports bet, it's about $12.48.
If you're able to pull that off, that'll be great. But yeah, James, you're back in the training. You got some stuff going on this week.
Yeah, mate. The Wicks started preseason training this week, and
yeah, it's our favorite Sydney team. Actually, it's not. Mine's uni, but whatever.
I'll go. Look at his face. Look at his face.
That's family. Come on now, man. That's family, bro.
Me and James got a photo with Checker. We're throwing up the Wicks symbol.
The Wicks symbol?
We're ready to go.
Yeah. West Sides?
Yeah. Oh, wait. One last thing in the podcast. Did you hear Checker's interview with Eddie Jones asking him about what he wants to do next after his...
Please tell me he said Tonga.
He said he wants to coach like a West Indies team or something.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
I'm here for that.
I saw that and I was like... Oh,
you want to know why? Because they got money, because they have cricket. He's not going to Polynesian. There ain't no money there.
Mate, I think he just wants to be in the West Indies. I want to coach rugby in Hawaii. It doesn't.
We could do that, bro. With some cousins, we should make it.
I mean, if you can do a better job than the last bid, then you can probably try and get a team run.
Oh, that's another podcast. That's a whole other podcast. That's a whole other podcast.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
But okay. All right. Everyone, see you next week. Thank you for tuning into the Bonus Point podcast. We'll see you talking about the Black Ferns, the All Blacks, the Wallabies, and everything to do with rugby.
I'm also disappointed we weren't talking about Tonga that played. They've had test matches too, guys.
Who they play?
So, they're on an autumn test tour too.
No, but I was asking who they play.
They played England and they lost dramatically.
When was that?
Like 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. It was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying, bro. I'm just saying there's more teams than just Australia and the All Blacks.
All right. Next week, we'll be talking about all the Tongan matchups. Can't wait for it. Tune in next week. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you for tuning in.